Hello and welcome to the Growth and Innovation Show on Import Export TV. My next guest is David Chuter, CEO of the Innovative Manufacturing CRC based here in Melbourne. David is passionate about local industry and creating a strong platform for Australian manufacturing. He has more than 30 years of international manufacturing experience, with much of this gained in the global automotive industry. So David, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So what does being innovative mean to you? And do you think that sometimes the word innovative gets thrown around a little too much?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. It's become a bit overused, and therefore what it means has been pretty much diluted, I think, and misunderstood. Innovation, to me, in its purest form, is coming up with new ideas that you can then sell to somebody. If you can't sell it, I'd argue it's no much better than an invention, which is good, but it's not really driving commercial or impact outcomes. And so innovation is different from improvement, it's different from invention. And I think if you're clear about what innovation can really stand for, you'll develop programs to really take new things out to the world.
It's an interesting distinction, that. Okay, so how can businesses truly implement a culture of innovation in their workplace rather than just being inventive? How do they truly be innovative?
Yeah, look, there's a big assumption there that many businesses are themselves inventive. In fact, a lot of the research we've done shows that many don't even have structured programs for continuous improvement. But innovation is just about thinking differently. And to do that, you probably have to bring others into the discussion and the idea sharing. That drives a lot of collaborative behaviors that, again, we're not fantastic at in Australia. We all think we compete with each other, but actually our competition is global, despite what COVID's brought. And so to me, developing a culture of innovation is about being willing to take risks, in fact, reward for taking risks, celebrate success, work with others, but have a very, very clear idea on how you're planning to build uniqueness in your business and how you can use technology to create that uniqueness.
Here in Australia, we've been very lucky for the last couple of decades, and we haven't been forced to be innovative, unlike other countries where competition is very rife. Do you see that as a problem moving forward, and how do we overcome that?
Yeah, it is a problem. There's I would argue, a high degree of complacency and being comfortable that's set into business in Australia. COVID has certainly shaken that up. But the immediate reaction was, well, how can government help me? And smart businesses actually haven't waited for government to help them. They've gone on and done amazing things. Look at companies like Rode microphones, Black Magic video cameras, perhaps even in use in your studio there. These are Australian companies that have invested heavily in design and engineering and also manufacture in Australia, despite us being perceived as a high-cost country. And they're conquering the world. We've got other examples like Cochlear and ResMed and many. We just don't know enough of them. And I don't think that's allowing us to move many other companies out of that level of comfortable and complacent that my business is going to be okay.
So let's move on to just manufacturing generally, globally. And what major changes do you see?
Yeah, there's two or three changes that are in motion right now. One of them is revisiting this whole concept of global supply chains, where you have large-scale manufacturing in one location, like China. We're seeing this with semiconductor chip limitations, causing Toyota to basically halve their production. So what we're going to see is a realignment of those global supply chains, which will lead to a lot more manufacturing locally, which in turn should be good for markets like Australia. We're also seeing a substantially faster shift to digitalization, particularly in manufacturing. That phrases like Industry 4.0 that embrace technologies, these technologies aren't new. They've been used in the automotive and aerospace industries for many years, things like 3D printing, robotics, virtual reality. But the reality is they're now affordable for many businesses to take up. So rapid digitalization. And I think the third element is really driving sustainable manufacturing. How do we make things with genuinely clean and honest inputs, minimal outputs, emission-free? And again, if you add all those together, there is great opportunity for Australian manufacturing to really create some uniqueness and create high-value jobs in that process.
What kind of projects is the IMCRC working on at the moment? And are there any in particular that we should keep an eye out for?
Yeah, and we've got more than 60 projects that we've helped to co-fund. These are projects that see manufacturers work with some of Australia's best universities and the CSIRO. And these are multi-year projects, but they're all designed to be truly innovative and create new products and processes. We've got some long-term projects. We've got some short-term projects, more recent ones with a company called Alkalizer that is working to create a very rapid, very highly accurate COVID test strip. For any of you that have had a COVID test, it's not the most pleasant thing to do. This involves taking a saliva sample and in 10 minutes getting a very accurate result through a handheld device that traditionally has been used to do things like alcohol and illicit drug testing, breath testing. So we've got projects across future of work programs, robotics, 3D printing, the whole variety of new technologies that are now being embedded into manufacturing. And collectively, this is going to enable billions of dollars worth of impact to the Australian economy and create thousands of jobs.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's a very exciting CRC, and I recommend people go and check out your website. Look, David, thank you so much. I know you're extremely busy. You've got a lot of balls in the air at the moment, so to speak, and a very busy man. So thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, and thanks again for having me on.
My next guest is Veronica Phil, a behavioural economist by trade, who, after spending 7 years as a political advisor, decided her ideas were too good to waste in the bowels of government. So she ditched the safety net of a consistent salary and decided to become an entrepreneur. Veronica is now the successful CEO of plant-based cheese startup Grounded Foods, the first company in the world to use fermented cauliflower and hemp seed to recreate favourite cheese styles without dairy or allergens. Good morning, Veronica Phil, calling in from Los Angeles. How are you today?
I'm really well, David. How are you guys going over there?
We're surviving. Lockdown is continuing, but we're surviving. Thanks for calling in. I really appreciate it. I know you're an extremely busy woman running a very successful startup over there in America. Now, I've got a few questions for you, and I'll just dive straight in. How advantageous do you think it is, having come from a different industry into the food and beverage industry that you're in, and how important or how advantageous do you think it is coming from a different industry when it comes to innovation?
Look, I think it's where we got our competitive advantage, really. I think being in the alternative protein space, it really is an unwritten script right now. For a lot of the products that are out there at the moment, for a lot of products that people are developing right now, there are no food scientists or food technologists that have gone to university or college to understand how to do this. We're kind of writing it from scratch right now. And that means that it's a completely open playing field. A lot of the rules don't apply anymore. I think anything that you learned back in uni doesn't necessarily apply these days. So for us, I think we've done very, very well having an R&D department of one guy who happens to be an award-winning fine dining chef from Australia, who just happened to think very, very differently about how alternative dairy was made, and happened to be the first guy to think, hey, can I make cheese from hemp and cauliflower? And how can I extract maximum nutritional value out of hemp? And how can I prolong its shelf life? And all of these things that I guess, traditional industry players had never thought to do before. So from that perspective, I think that it's incredibly advantageous. What really excites me is exactly that fact that, there are much, much larger companies, old school food manufacturers. There's the Kraft Heinz, Unilever and General Mills of the world, who have these massive R&D teams, of course, heaps and heaps of funding behind them, but they're still thinking the same way about everything. They're still thinking along these traditional paths. So as a startup, I think that is our competitive advantage. We're just not doing that. We're doing something completely different.
So you've seen very rapid growth since you started a couple of years back here in Australia and moved over to the US. How have you managed this very rapid growth?
Honestly, feels like one never-ending rolling panic attack 24 hours a day. That is my honest answer. There is no way to manage it. I think that you're either born an entrepreneur or you're not, and that's what differentiates ones that become very successful from the ones that just, their personalities are not suited to it. It's incredibly stressful. incredibly high pressure, and you literally, I think, to do something like this, you've just got to be willing to give up your entire life to do it. And that's not for everyone, and nor should it be. It just happened to be that my partner and I had that kind of personality where we love this kind of thing and we get a thrill out of it. So that's how we manage it. I think it's just part of our DNA that, you know, we can't stop. Even if we wanted to, we can't actually stop. We've got to keep going.
You manage and run Grounded social media platforms, and you've done that since day one. How have you've achieved amazing traction as well through that process? What are your top tips for managing social media platforms such as Instagram?
Never hire a PR agency or a social media agency to do it for you. That is my top tip. You know, not every founder has to run it themselves. That's fine for us right now while we're still a very small company. And we don't have a huge following in comparison to other players in our space, but we do have a very genuine, organic, and highly engaged audience. And that matters so much more than buying followers. We focus very much on like rapid response marketing, making sure that every single person that comments on our feeds is responded to, like that we have that direct engagement. And that's, again, another one of those competitive advantages that as a small startup who, you know, at that stage, you don't necessarily have a lot of money, but you are rich in time. That's one way that we can get an edge on much, much larger players where they're outsourcing everything. They kind of lose that direct human face to a brand. I think that that's important to retain for as long as possible, even if it's just your internal team doing it themselves. That's not to say that you shouldn't outsource some aspects to agencies. There's a role for that as well, but absolutely nothing compares to being able to respond to your direct audience one-on-one in real time. Yep.
And the sense of humor you guys pass across on your Instagram, that's you, isn't it? That's your dark view of the world, is it?
That is just me. That is literally just me in our home office, probably not wearing pants, probably drinking bourbon, responding in real time to people. I think that we're in a different era of social media now where, you know, there's a lot more that you can get away with. It's almost entertainment now for brands to snap back at stupid comments and trolls. People actually hire for like snark officers these days, people that will talk back to trolls, and that becomes part of the fun of it. That's why people follow the brand on social media, because they're enjoying reading that interaction. So we have a lot of fun with that. We don't hold back.
Yeah, obviously the way brands deal with trolls is changing, so you kind of take them on and have a bit of fun with it.
Yeah, and that I think if you do it intelligently, that leads to even further support and further engagement with your target audience, and over time just filters out the people that you don't need to worry about marketing to anyway. I think what a lot of brands forget is that, you know, in terms of marketing, it's really pointless, I think, to try and make your brand resonate with absolutely everyone. If we try to do that, you just end up with a really average brand. Why not just hone in all of your resources on the people that you know are already positioned to buy your product or already most likely to engage with you, and stop spending money on the people that just are never going to enjoy it and never going to buy it.
Okay, so just my last question and I'll let you get back to it. So what's next for Grounded? So you're in Whole Foods and in America, and you've launched, you're making these amazing cheeses, and what's next for you guys over the next 6 to 12 months?
We've got an entirely new brand coming out mid next year, aimed at a younger audience. And it really is just keeping the R&D machine rolling. I think we were very aware from day one that as soon as we came out with a product like this, people would start, you know, copying us. And we can tell already, because I'd say 50% of our customers online are other competitors in this space that just order our products directly to their R&D departments. No shame, just they don't even try and hide it. But you've just got to understand that from day one. Of course, that's going to happen. So you need to always be working 10 steps ahead of them, and always working on the next thing that you're going to launch without them realizing. So that's our focus.
Fantastic. And when you say your R&D department, you mean Sean Quaid, your lovely partner there, right?
Absolutely. It's pretty incredible that this one guy from a restaurant in Melbourne, Australia, managed to come up with a way of cracking the code on plant-based cheese that nobody in the world had done before. Nobody had even thought to do. It still blows us away every day. Like, how's no one thought to do this before?
Look, thank you so much, Veronica. It was great to see you. And look, congratulations. We're all rooting for you over here in Australia for Grounded Foods. And I do recommend everybody checks out Grounded Foods. It's an incredible cheese. You can't buy it in Australia yet, but one day, hopefully you will.
When you let us back in the country, maybe we can.
All right, Veronica, thank you so much.
Thanks, David.
Thanks. My next guest is the inimitable Badara Endai. Badara is a truly innovative thought leader in the fashion industry. He's been featured in publications such as GQ, Vogue, The Wall Street Journal, and many more. Hello, Badara Endai. Thank you for calling in from Paris. It's great to see you. How are you today?
I'm very well, David. Thank you. A little bit tired from a long trip last night, but thank you very much.
Okay, let's dive straight in. Fashion is an intrinsically innovative industry. How did you break through all the noise and stand out?
I think it's all about opportunities, actually, and also how you use them. Because I was a basketball player and then had a chance to meet a friend of mine who started a fashion magazine and who had asked me to be an editor. And this is how I started getting into the world of fashion, which I had no clue of. And to my mind, I had some fashion sense, but going to the first fashion week, I realized that I had no fashion sense, and so that I had to relearn everything. But talking about opportunities, we first worked with Anna Della Russo, who's the editor-in-chief of Vogue Japan. She's Italian, and this was the early days of Instagram, so we were directing and creating her content as well, parallel to writing articles and reviews about the fashion shows. So this has given me some visibility being next to her and around her all the time. And I was approached by some photographers such as GQ, and who started snapping photos, which were then published on many social media platforms. So this was the beginning of me getting into fashion, I guess. Yeah.
You mentioned early days of Instagram there, so I'm really keen to kind of explore your use of Instagram. Every time I'm with you, you've got 2 mobile phones, a drone, you're curating and editing and uploading and posting all the time. Have you got any kind of tips for utilizing Instagram successfully?
Yes, but first you have to know what you want from what you're doing with Instagram, because you can use the tools for many different things. I remember when I first started social media, it was just to post nice things. That's what it was for. And then quickly I realized that, oh, actually this could be a business, and you can also build an image from it, that because image also is something that can open many other doors.
So how important are influencers on social media platforms, and how important is it for businesses to associate themselves with influencers in their industries?
As for myself, I don't call myself an influencer because I do many different things. I don't see that, and especially because now I think the word influencer has become so in French say pejorative, very common. It doesn't have anything. It's not bringing what it used to be anymore. It's very important that people are really learning more human lessons from what you are doing and posting, even though it's aesthetic. So for me, I'm going more on that route.
So it's interesting you mentioned you don't like to be called an influencer, and I have noticed that personally as well over the last year or maybe more, the idea of a social influencer has become more and more negative. Why do you think that's been happening?
It's just a matter of supply and demand, I think. And right now, there are too many people calling themselves influencers who are not even meeting the characteristics of what a real influencer is, because a real influencer, he or she or the person influences others in a positive way mostly. But now you see people who post things that, and you wonder like, okay, what is this going to bring me? That it is important that you are able to give something useful to people through what you are doing.
You have a range of clothing where you modify the clothes by painting them, so they become quite unique and individual. How did you come up with that idea, and what inspires you with that?
Many years ago, I started to realize I had too many clothes and stuff, and that I wasn't wearing regularly. And I thought, you know what, why not? Because some of the stuff actually, I was like, why do I even have this? I don't need it. I don't like it that much. One day I have watched a fashion show, the collection of Tom Brown. So the few hours later, I was in the shop buying some paints and all that, and I went back home the next day. I started painting some shoes, some shirts. So I started thinking of ways to not just throw things away just because you didn't like them, or to see what you can do with it. And so this is how it started.
You have been recently appointed a cultural ambassador for your home country of Senegal. How important is that to you? And as you are getting older, how are you reconnecting back to Senegal, and what do you hope to do with this new cultural ambassadorship?
Well, first of all, I'm not getting older. No.
Really, what's the secret then?
I did a course about colors because I love colors, and I shared my personal story, and also where the inspiration of colors came from Senegal, of course, because Senegal is very colorful, even how people dress in the streets, the walls, how the walls are painted. Through that project, the students were supposed to create 2 pieces at the end of the semester that they were going to present to me as a kind of a show with a model that's going to show me what they did. And thought, it would be interesting to invite the Senegalese ambassador and his team because I'm sharing actually my origins, so it will be nice that they see it, that how it inspired some of these students. And so it connected me with the Senegalese embassy. 2 months ago, I think maybe 3 months ago, I had a meeting with them regarding another even bigger project, and then they surprised me with that. So I was very touched emotionally because I never thought of that in that term, and it was very unexpected. But yes, I was very proud to have that and to have that recognition.
Dara, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man and you have a day ahead of you in beautiful Paris. So thank you again and take care.
Thank you very much, David. And I hope to speak to you soon. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for watching. I hope you gleaned some interesting insights from that show, and make sure you tune in again next time.